Today I'm going to show you how I made these beautiful, delicious, easy, Texas-style no-wrap ribs. Welcome back to Burnt Offerings Barbecue. My name is Trevor. My cameraman is out sick today, so I am running the camera by myself today, but that's okay because today we're making ribs. These are pork ribs, St. Louis style, from my local meat market, Torres Meat House. I'm not going to show you guys an in-depth look on how to trim ribs. There's 1,000,001 videos on YouTube how to do that. But I need to trim these up just real quick. I always like to start on the back. I'm always looking for that little extra piece right there. Turn it this way and let's trim that off. Let's talk about membrane for a second. Now, usually I'm kind of 50-50. Sometimes I like to take the membrane off. Sometimes I'll leave it on. And recently I've just been leaving it on because I've been really lazy. So what I'll do is I'll score it. I'll go between each of the bones and score it with this knife. And then I'll usually go across like that. And then maybe I'll do like a crosshatch. You don't have to go super deep, you know, just some little slits here and there. Just use kind of the tip of your knife. And then I'll go the other way. And then usually I'll also go diagonal just because. There we go. Flip these ribs over. Take care of a little bit of this fat. And then down here on the smaller side, you'll see there is a lot of meat right here. There's usually just one or two kind of smaller bones somewhere right in here. And so usually what I'll do is I'll just take my knife and I will find one of the little bones, maybe right there, and trim that off. And then these two little pieces are going to get seasoned up and thrown on the pit to make snacks while we're cooking, so I can have something to eat. We'll do this third one real quick right here. I'm a little bit of a germaphobe whenever it comes to meat and everything. So whenever I cook, I always have my dirty hand, which is my left hand, and then I have my clean hand, which is my right hand with the knife. This doesn't have a ton of fat right here on the end, so I'm going to leave that. Let's flip it over. And again, we find this little bit of a mohawk. We can trim that down. And once we trim that mohawk down, we can come over here again to the small side, find where these couple little bones are, maybe right here, and trim that off. Again, another snack. Here's a little bit of a close-up. You can see where I made those marks right there on the membrane. Again, sometimes I remove it, but a lot of times I'm just kind of lazy. So I'm going to score it and throw it on the pit. Now here's a little bit of a secret for those of you who are cooking at home. If you take these racks and kind of cut them in half, then they might cook just a little bit quicker. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to start right here, take this rack, just kind of find where the middle is, maybe somewhere right here. And I'm going to cut this rack in half. Follow the bone. There we go. There's two halves. And let's keep going. When I do ribs at home, I want to keep it as simple as possible. I don't inject. I don't really marinate. What I will do is I will season them up, let them sit for maybe 10-15 minutes while the pit comes up to temperature. And I don't use a binder at all, just seasoning. And then whenever the internal temperature of the ribs gets around 150 or 160, I will start hitting it with a mop sauce. So let's season these up real quick. Today I'm going on with some of this Texas Barbecue Chapter Grand Champion blend. This is a group on Facebook that I joined just a couple weeks ago. A group of awesome people. They all love barbecue. They're super helpful, super friendly. If you have any questions, you can always ask, and there's always someone who's willing to help answer or help you out. Anyway, you should check them out on Facebook, and shout out to them and Torres Meat House for letting me use this today on these ribs. So like I said, I don't use a binder at all on my ribs. I will just hit it with the seasoning and let it sit here for 10 or 15 minutes. And remember, clean hand, dirty hand. The back I don't go too super heavy on. Pat it in. Pat it in. And usually what I'll do is I will flip the ribs up and then dab what is left on the board to get that side. So let's finish seasoning the rest of these. And don't forget our snacks. And again, I will usually take these and just kind of dab on what is left on the board. This one I'll throw a little more seasoning on. All right, we are seasoned. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick and then we will throw these on the smoker. We're cooking on the Kamado Joe today with our Smoky Woods charcoal, but I'm actually not gonna use the hickory chunks today. I'm actually gonna use one of these smaller pieces of post oak. Our smoker's up to temp. I like to cook around 300, so let's throw this log in real quick and then we'll throw our ribs on. When you throw that wood in there, it might make the temperature kick up a little bit, so just be a little wary of that. We are smoking today indirect. And we're going to squeeze these little snack bites in wherever we can. So we've got everything on. We're going to close the lid and we're going to check back here in just a little bit. So far we trimmed our ribs. We threw our seasoning on, no binder. I don't really use binders. And then we have our smoker set to 300 degrees. So one thing I will do, I don't usually inject or anything like that. But what I will do is I will make a mop sauce. So let me show you how I do that real quick. So when I make my mop sauce, usually what I'll do is I will start with the sauce that I'm going to put on my ribs at the end. And then I add in that same rub that I seasoned it with. And then I begin to cut it and thin it out with apple cider vinegar. I will also use water. And if you want to add in anything extra, you are more than welcome to throw any of that in. So let's mix this up real quick. Now, I'm a big proponent of cooking with the heart and cooking with the soul. I don't really do a bunch of measurements, but I just look and see what looks good. So then I'll take this, I will take some of my apple cider vinegar. And again, I don't do measurements. I'm cooking with the heart here. Just enough to kind of thin it out. Then I'll take some of my seasoning, kind of sprinkle that in there till it makes me happy. I'm going to take some of this candy jalapeno just to try. And usually before I add my water, I will go ahead and give this a quick stir. Stir it up just real quick. And again, I'm looking for a consistency. I'm not really caring too much, again, about the amount of everything I'm putting in there. I'm looking for a consistency. Does it look like a mop sauce? Does it look nice and wet? So I might add just a touch more of my barbecue sauce, and we'll check it out here in just a second. Whoops. And let's add a dash of water. So that's generally what I'm looking for, something that's a little runny, not as thick as barbecue sauce, but not thin like water. That's it. Here's kind of a little bit of a close-up of whatever you want to see. You can see, again, it's not as thick as a barbecue sauce is, but it's not super thin or runny like water. So it's been about an hour. We're still rocking right around 300 degrees. Our internal temperature is about 160. Anywhere between 160 and 165 is where I like to put my mop sauce on. So let's take a look real quick. So we've got some nice color. Everything's cooking up really good. These little snack pieces are probably ready to come off. So let's get ready to hit this with the mop sauce. This is going to be really difficult to do with one hand. Now, usually I'll only do my mop sauce twice. First time around 160 and then the second time around 180, because whenever it gets up to about 195, close to 200, is whenever I like to put my sauce on, and I'll let it sit there and tack up and glaze. What I'm about to do off camera real quick, because I've only got 2 hands, is I'm going to take my ribs and kind of rotate them around just to make sure everything's getting cooked evenly and the bottoms aren't getting too overdone or anything. I took the little snack bites off and they are looking pretty good. All right, so we've been cruising right along, roughly around 325 degrees or so. Total cook time so far has been about an hour and a half. At 180, I had put the second round of mop sauce on there. And so right now everything's temping about 190, 195. And so I'm going to start putting sauce on there so it can start tacking up for the glaze. And I will give you a check-in here in a second after I put that sauce on. The sauce is on and we are looking really good. All around the edges and on the bottom side, we have this little bit of char going on. And man, I tell you, there's a difference between burnt and char, but that char is so delicious. Now, like I said, there's a difference between burnt and char. That char is one reason why I kind of like to leave the membrane on. It gets the bottom a little more crispy, and that crispy char pretty much tastes like bacon. It is delicious if done right. And if you don't really like it or you end up burning it, that's okay too. You can take your knife and scrape it off. It's not that big of a deal. Now, another thing to remember is that you're not cooking to time or temp, you're checking for probe tender, right? So that probe tenderness could happen anywhere from 200, even up to 210. It's different every time. So make sure that you're checking for probe tender and you're not checking just for time and temp. As soon as it hits 202 or 203 doesn't mean you necessarily have to pull it off. Again, take your probe, poke it in there, and make sure that it feels like butter whenever you're poking it in. Now, another thing you'll notice is that I haven't wrapped these at all, and I usually don't wrap my ribs at all. It's just easier that way. I found it gives me, again, that delicious kind of char flavor. If you're cooking on your offset smoker, like I have my big 500-gallon trailer over here, I usually cook the ribs up on the top rack. That way that smoke can get nice on the bottom of the ribs as well as on the top. And again, it just aids to that flavor on the bottom. And I'm telling you guys, that char, it just tastes like bacon. It is delicious if done right. Again, if you don't like it, that's okay. You can always scrape it off and you'll be just fine. And there we have it. All of these ribs finished probe tender. They have a beautiful, rich maroon color to them. Again, around the edges, we have the char. And this is exactly what I'm looking for whenever I'm cooking ribs. And this is how I do my Texas style ribs. I keep it simple. We just use one rub, or you can just use salt and pepper. I use a Texas barbecue sauce to finish with. The only little thing I do extra is a mop sauce just to kind of build a layer of flavor. But I am telling you, these are some pretty looking ribs. And we finished this cook in about 2 hours. This is definitely something you can do during the week if you're really looking for that barbecue itch. If you want some ribs, 2 hours is not a big deal. And there you have it. That's how I do my Texas style ribs. So recap of the cook process, we got our smoker to 300 degrees. We took our ribs and we scored the membrane. We didn't remove it. And there was no binder. We just hit it with our rub and threw it on. Remember, if you want these to cook faster, you should try and cut the rack in half. But if not, I'm not sure what your cook time is going to look like. Anyway, when it got to about 160, we hit it with our mop sauce. 180, again, our second layer of mop sauce. And then at 195, we hit it with our Texas style barbecue sauce until it became probe tender. And again, there was no wrap, there was no binder. This was as easy as possible, as simple as possible. And that's the kind of guy I am. Thanks again, guys, for checking this out. If you would, please, if you like the video, tap the like button. If you dislike the video, you can tap the dislike button twice. Please make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.